Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Fix This House. On today's episode, I'm going to be showing you how to pour a concrete slab easily, so stay tuned. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. If you're new to the channel, please consider pressing the subscribe and notification bell so you can always be in tune on DIYs, how-to videos, and product reviews that I do within this channel. So as you can see that this deck has been rotting out for many years now. It's actually unsafe to actually walk onto this deck. It has many holes and very weak areas, so I decided to just pretty much just tear and demolish the whole thing. Now this is actually my parents' deck. On the other side of this is another decking. On this one, we're just going to tear it apart and we're going to replace it with an extension concrete slab. As you can see underneath it, it's just plain dirt. Now what I did here is I created a frame out of 2x4s. It is supported by pegs. One side is steel peg and this one is actually a wooden peg, just so that it supports it once you start pouring. This is the old concrete slab that I'm just going to be joining it onto, and it's going to be nice and leveled throughout here. And I use some bricks just to make sure that it's nice and leveled. Use a leveler. I'm going to be using about 25 to 30 bags of concrete. Now this is the SAKRETE that I got from Home Depot. It's great for slabs, driveways, walkways, and steps. It's ready to walk on within 24 hours and vehicle traffic in 72 hours, and it's only $3.68 a bag depending on where you're located. Now what we're using here is a tamper tool. Again, all the tools and items that I use within this video, I'll leave it on the description down below. Now this is going to be a 4 to 5 inch concrete slab. Again, depending on where you live or your building code, this 4 to 5 inch, you don't necessarily need rebar, so I'm not going to be using rebar. Anything that's going to be greater than 6 inches depth on concrete, you want to use some rebar for reinforcement. And also you want to pour some compacted gravel sub base over this so that you can have proper drainage. Again, this is going to be just a little small connection from my existing concrete slab, so I'm not going to be using any of that stuff. I'm just going to be compacting it, and it's going to be nice and properly leveled before we actually pour the slab. Now it's very easy to actually activate this stuff. All you got to do is pretty much open the bag, pour it in a wheelbarrow. If you have a mini concrete mixer, that works too, and just add water. You got to use a lot of water. I've seen some few people that mix concrete and they make it so dry and it's very hard to work with. You want to use a lot of water on this so that you have a lot of time, working time, to actually run and actually move this around. You got about 90 minutes to work this stuff once you start putting it before it's actually starting to harden. Use a bow rake or any type of leveling tool that you may have. What we're using here is a bow rake to pretty much distribute and even out where the concrete's going to lay on. Now just use a shovel to distribute all the necessary spots that you may have missed, and any low spots, just take your shovel and distribute it evenly across your area. After you distribute it, make sure you just kind of poke around like this, mix it within different areas just so that you can release some of the bulk. Here's what it looks so far. Not very pleasing. Again, we're gonna pour more onto this empty spot. Now make sure you have a 2x4 that is nice and straight. What you're gonna do is you're just pretty much gonna skim right through the top. It's kind of like skimming through a cake. This is actually easier if you have 2 people involved, but if you're only working by yourself, you can just use this type of method. Again, you can do the sawing method just so that you can even out and push all the excess off, and then just pretty much distribute the rest of any high and lows with a bow rake. And what you can do is you can flip your bow rake and you can use that to rake over and distribute all the excess stuff on the low spots. Now continue on with your 2x4 and just skim it right through. Now you might think that this is a little bit wet of a concrete. It's actually not. It's actually perfect. It makes it so that you can work this stuff a lot better, and it sets well on many areas. Take your shovel and distribute it along the high and low areas. Now here you go. Here's the two-man method. It actually works a lot easier and a lot better if you have two people doing this. But again, this is easily accomplished if you're working by yourself. Just make sure that you work it on one side and then go to the other side and do that sawing method to skim right through it. Again, we're just pretty much blending this in with the old concrete slab. Again, now you're using a trowel to skim through this thing. Make sure that you use that nice and finesse method. Now you can use this 12 to 14 inch trowel to smooth out the top. Again, we're not too worried about this because we'll be adding texture later on, but make sure that it is nice and leveled. You can also use a float to do this to make it easier for yourself, but float is actually best when you're covering a huge area. This is just a small piece of area, so using a trowel will suffice. And make sure, again, take your time and make sure it's nice and neat. This is what it looks like so far. Again, we just got to make sure that the edges are nice and clean. Now you can see that using a lot of water makes this thing so that you can skim through it really well and really easily. If this was dry, it's going to be really hard to work with. Now again, within a few minutes after it's actually starting to dry, we're going to use a push broom to add texture. We're not pushing down on the broom, we're just simply running it over with no pressure. You're just pretty much just running the broom. Don't apply pressure because you will end up having a dimple or pretty much having a crater onto your concrete. This method is only if you want to add texture. As you can see on the old slab, there is some type of a wavy texture on there. We didn't bother to match the wave to this. We're just doing straight because this is actually just gonna be a connection piece that we're gonna be putting our barbecue, and it's gonna be pretty much covered with our barbecue set anyways, so no need for that. But it's totally up to you if you want to take the time to do the waves or any type of pattern or texture pattern that you may have. Feel free to do so. Again, we're just skimming and pretty much brushing off the excess. Use your trowel to take off the excess, as you can see here. Just be very careful, don't damage the edges. And we're just feathering it out to the old concrete slab. Take your time. This is the detail work. Make sure that you take out any pebbles or any type of uneven surface. What we did is we wet the broom, cleaned out the broom with the old concrete clumps. Now we're working with a wet, clean broom and pretty much just feathering it onto the old existing slab. This is what it looks so far. So far it's looking nice and clean. This is what is the final product. And after a few hours setting in, you can actually touch it and it's nice and hardened. Again, this stuff you can walk on within 24 hours of dry time, and you can drive through it after 72 hours. Now the framing, I don't want to take off just yet. Some people want to take it off right away, which is fine, but I want to keep this on, leave it in for at least 24 hours before I want to take out the 2x4 framing. We're going to take off the pegs that is attached to it right there, detach it, and the rest of the overfill, all those over pour concrete, you can just clean it up easily. So once again, friends, if you found this video helpful and you found value to this, please hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell so you can always be in tune on DIYs and how-to videos that I do within this channel. Thank you so much. I'll see you on the next video.